Now today, Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and verse number 1. This is the context that I find our statement in. Two are better than one. You could say two heads are better than one. And I find this in Ecclesiastes and chapter number 4. Solomon says, "So I returned and considered all the oppressions that are done under the sun, and behold, the tears of such as were oppressed. They had no comforter, and on the side of their oppressors there was power, but they had no comfort." Now, when you and I read in the book of Ecclesiastes, as I pointed out the other day, we are reading a summary of the natural course of human life. Just these are the events that transpire, the affairs that transpire in the course of living life, just being alive, being here in the world. I don't have a martyr complex, and I certainly don't want my life to be any more difficult and any harder than it's going to be just by the fact that I'm living here. You know, life, there's a cliche, life is hard, but it's even harder if you're stupid. And there is a difficulty just in the matter of life. There's always resistance. Anytime you try to move, there is always resistance. We have the resistance of gravity. We have the resistance of the laws of physics. Sometimes whenever you're trying to move forward, you're in a headwind, and a headwind will make things more difficult. You'll have to exert more energy to move forward. Solomon has given us Ecclesiastes 1, 2, and 3. And in chapter number 4, we have somewhat of a summary and a conclusion of what he has dealt with. So Solomon says, "So I returned and considered." I returned and considered. Now, this is something that is missing in our society today. I'm a reader. I read books. I have an iPhone. I have 5 computers, and we do so much digitally now. But I don't read on a Kindle, or I don't read books online. When I read, I want to hold a book in my hand. I read the Bible through no less than one time a year, and I never read the Bible on my phone. I might look a verse up on my phone, but I never read the Bible on my phone. I always do my Bible reading with an open Bible in my hand and in my lap, and I sit and read. And one of the byproducts of the screen age in which we live, the virtual reality age in which we live, is no one gives consideration to things anymore. Now, when I use that term consideration, I'm using it in the historic sense, just as Solomon is using it here. So I returned and considered. I returned and considered. And the matter of consider or consideration here is to view something that is very attentively, to give attention to what one is looking at. In a literal sense, it gives us the idea to sit by or to sit close to a particular thing, to set the eye or the mind on something, to examine it with attention. Living in the day that we live in now, we're reminded that everything has to be done now in sound bites. The news is given to us in sound bites, and long treatises or long discourses or long form interviews are virtually a thing of the past. Everything now has been so dumbed down and simplified and brought down to a sound bite, a text almost. And the problem with that is no one sits long enough to give attention to what they are seeing or viewing. Our minds are so cluttered and our minds move so rapidly now from one thing to the other. Again, we hear all these complaints about attention deficit disorder, and I don't think that attention deficit disorder necessarily needs to be dealt with drugs. We drug these children and turn them into zombies to try to deal with ADD, so-called. Well, I was a boy at one time too, and I had an extremely difficult time paying attention when I was in class. I raised pigeons when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, and I could tell you very little about what my teacher was reviewing in class, but I could tell you everything you would want to know about the pigeons I raised, the type they were, their pedigree, how they were bred, what lines they were bred down from. I wasn't stupid and might have a low IQ. I just wasn't interested in what that teacher was teaching. Now, if I was in school today, they'd want to put me on drugs and just zone me out and make me a zombie. And I wouldn't know anything about what my teacher was teaching, and I wouldn't know anything about the pigeons that I was raising, or a car I might have been working on, or some project that I was definitely interested in. Our problem today is people have difficulty fixing their mind on a particular thing to give to that careful examination, to ponder or to study. The Bible and David, King David in the Psalms, speaks many times about my meditation. My meditation. Paul the Apostle advises young Timothy to meditate on these things. Give thyself wholly to them. That is the matter of consideration. So Solomon says, I returned and considered, I viewed the oppressions that are done under the sun. I viewed the oppressions attentively. I gave attention to these things. So Solomon had regard unto these things and respect. I was in a meeting the other day and a man commented and he said, all those people are complaining. They're just up there complaining. Well, they might certainly have been complaining, but those that were complaining felt like they were definitely being imperiled by what was transpiring in the minutia of county government, and they didn't want these things to be put in their neighborhoods, or these things to have an effect on their property and their property ownership, and they were pushing back against that. And I sat there and watched other county elected officials that were inattentive and unconcerned and would give no examination to the facts that were presented at all. They had already made up their mind, this is what we're going to do, and we really don't care how this has an effect on you. We don't care about this. This is what we're going to do, whether or not you like it. This is what we're going to do. The matter of consideration has been lost on our society. And because of that, I think that we have a society and a group of people that are very vain. They are very shallow. There's not any depth to men's thinking. There's not a lot of depth to what affects men. Unfortunately, men are, for want of a better way of saying it, are given to things that are entirely superficial. In the final analysis, they are given to things that are utterly meaningless. He said, I returned and considered all the oppressions. Now, life is a very oppressive thing. I'm glad to be alive. You know, the only alternative to being alive is being dead. And I told someone the other day, the only alternative to getting old is dying young. And so I'm looking forward to getting old because I like that prospect much, much better than I like the prospect of dying young. There is always an oppressive element in life. Just living here has a certain amount of oppression. Now, when we see these oppressions, obviously there can be tyranny, and I think that the United States government has become quite tyrannical in the well, probably since 2000, the year 2000, but it really began to accelerate after 2008, and it has really accelerated since January of 2021. The tyranny of oppression. But the word oppression is broader than just carrying the idea of tyranny or someone that is a tyrannical individual. The matter of oppression carries that of calamity and hardship. And I think that that is probably what Solomon is dealing with here. He saw the oppressions, all the oppressions that are done under the sun. Now my time has gotten away from me, but by the grace of God and your listenership, I will deal with this on the Bright Spot Hour on the broadcast tomorrow. That will be the 30th of December. May the Lord richly bless you until that time.
You may write the Bright Spot Hour at Post Office Box 4, Greenville, South Carolina.